Hey yo, LAZ man, by the time you see this promo right here, part one to my life story, Kids with Guns, I'll probably already be out. You heard? Make sure y'all check that part one, part two is in the works right now. Brownsville, Brooklyn history, Brooklyn legacies that I'm speaking about, childhood traumas that I'm speaking about. You know, things I never spoke about in my life that I'm speaking about in this documentary. You heard? So make sure y'all tune in, cause I'm gonna be dropping some real heavy jewels. And that's a fact. Z-Lord, get at me. Hey yo, shout out to the bro DJ for show locked down in Virginia right now. I mean, shout out to the whole Jersey, the whole Virginia. Make sure you check the bros podcast, Truth Behind These Walls, on all streaming platforms. Make sure y'all subscribe to his joint and tell him Z-Man Suicide Polo with the Ski Man sent you. You heard? Gem Pop Gang in the building. Let's get it.
I even seen a dude's face literally look as if it melted right in his hands after getting a cup of some hot grease and oatmeal mixed with boiling water tossed on him. Now, if you're not familiar with what that is or what it does, man, the hot grease and the oatmeal makes a mixture thick enough to stick to a person's skin when it hits him in the face. This nigga was a dark-skinned dude, too. But when he came back from the infirmary, shit, man, the dude's face was lighter than mine, man, no bullshit. So, this is a story about one of the most heinous and notorious prisons, man, in the whole Virginia Department of Corrections. It was called Powhatan Correctional Center. I say was because it's no longer being used to house any prisoners or inmates anymore. You know, it actually, just here recently, like within the last 2 years or so, got shut down. And most all the population had just been relocated to other prisons around the state. The ones that remained there, they were just moved to like an old but newly renovated and updated juvenile prison that was only about 10 minutes away but still on the property named Beaumont. And really that was just so the state could continue to keep all its slave labor workers to run its industrial enterprise shops. I'll give you more on that in a second. A little while though before the shutdown, the prison was renamed and changed to State Farm Enterprise Unit. And it was called that because the shops that are there housed on the compound where the inmates was always used for slave labor. And they was paid slave wages to do all the state's work that actually brought in millions a year. You know, but that type of shit goes on all over the country, so that ain't really nothing unique to VA. And what they had on the grounds there was a milk plant, you know, that supplies the whole Department of Corrections, as well as many other businesses and corporations, you know, with its milk and ice cream and pretty much anything else that's made from milk. They also had a tag shop there where all the DMV license plates for the whole state of Virginia get made. And they also had a silk screen plant and a print shop there too. All of which, you know, the state contracts is worth like millions of dollars a piece. You know, so the state probably made gazillions of dollars over the years. And to be honest, that was probably the most likely the reason why that penitentiary stayed open for as long as it did. You know, make no mistake about it, there's plenty other penitentiaries all around the state. You know, it's like 43 facilities altogether when you include the work centers and road camps and shit. And that's not even talking about or taking into account for the federal spots or the local county and city or regional jails either. You know, and some of the other most notorious prisons in the state that all got like the biggest reputations for being the most dangerous and chaotic is spots like Red Onion, you know, which is a supermax, Wallen's Ridge, Sussex 1 and 2, which is both max joints too. And you got King Mountain and River North, you know, and then you got A couple spots like Nottoway, Augusta, Buckingham, and Lawrenceville, which, by the way, is the only private-owned prison in Virginia. That shit is like a world of its own. And it's really been in the news quite a bit lately with a lot of fentanyl deaths and other kind of criminal activity and other shit going on there. I can't forget about Greensville, which is the largest prison complex in the whole state. That shit is like 3 whole prisons in one. And then you had like older joints, that got crazy history and wild ass reputations too, like Southampton and Mecklenburg, and another joint from way back in the day that, we always hear all the old convicts talk about called the Wall. But all those spots been shut down, a long time ago. Anyhow, I can't really speak on some of those places I mentioned because I never really spent any substantial amount of time there other than Nottoway, which was crazy as hell too, but I'll save that story for another one. I will speak on Powhatan though, because I spent close to like 5 years there on this bed I'm on right now. And the amounts of violence and bloodshed I saw, was just fucking ridiculous, man. Like, that spot was always known as a terror dome or gladiator school, you know what I'm saying? Talking about like a real slaughterhouse, no bullshit. For one, it was one of the oldest, no, matter of fact, it was the oldest still standing prison in the state that was still in operation when I was there. The place is over like, I don't know, like 150 years old or more, and that's no lie, no exaggeration. I want to say it was built in like the 1870s, but that might not be accurate. It could have been older than that for real. Talking about some real Shawshank Redemption shit. Look, just to give you a real piece of history on it, Powhatan, the prison itself, sits on a piece of land called the State Farm, which is attached to the James River. And there's actually another prison on the grounds called James River 2, as well as another one also called Deep Meadows. Well, this land, it was used way back in the day when the slaves were brought to Virginia by way of the James River to house all his captives there before they were sent off to the auctions and be sold. So there's actually still places around on that land that you could go to and actually see with your own eyes where they still got like the original balls and chains and shackles that was used on slaves like over 100-something years ago. But inside the prison though, like deep down in the basements, specifically underneath M building, there's actually still cells that resemble like dungeons for real, with these big, thick black chains and shackles, still mounted to the walls where they used to lock dudes up and chain them to the bricks with their arms and legs, spread eagle out like a scarecrow, for days and weeks at a time. Imagine that shit. The old saying where dudes be like, they gonna do something so bad that the police gonna lock them up and put them under the jail. Well, that's exactly what these dungeon cells were. Filthy and decrepit, broken down, rusty little boxes that was completely underneath the rest of the prison, hidden and tucked away from everything else. And from what I'm told, dudes would sometimes be down there for months at a time, and they would completely lose their minds, man, or you may just never see them again. They may have died down there and nobody would have even known. I can only imagine there's probably a lot of spirits and angels and shit down there in that place, man. Or guys who never made it home due to all the violence that was there, or even at the hands of the guards or shit, even by their own hands, just being fed up, not being able to take it no more, and wind up taking their own life. That's not common for prison, man. And under conditions like that, I mean, that shit could certainly push a motherfucker to do some shit like that. I'm just saying, you have to really see that shit and experience it, truly get an overstanding of what I'm talking about. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is, the place was old as shit, falling apart, damn near busting open at the seams for real, even when I was there. Everything was always broken in the joint. It had the old school iron bars, at the front of the cells, and for the doors actually. Steel gates and razor barbed wire fences surround just about everything on the outside of the compound. Most of the buildings, they were built like the exact same way, and they were all connected by this big one hallway. And the cells that we lived in, the living cells, they was way smaller than the average cell they got these days. And as I said, this place was really old, so when it was actually built, those cells was really designed to just be single cells for one person. But around like 95, 96, due to the war on drugs, man, and so many dudes coming to prison with like fresh new drug charges and shit, prisons across America really started doubling up the single cells to make room for the influx of the new inmates and shit. Virginia was no exception to that. So by the time I got to Powhatan, it was 2 people per cell, and it was super congested. And just to give you an idea, man, of exactly how small it was in there, I could literally stand in the middle of the floor with both my arms extended each way, touch both walls on either side of the cell with my fingertips. And I'm only 5'9", so my arms ain't really that long. But that's how small and cramped it was in there for one person, let alone 2. So if your bunkie was up, and moving around the cell or whatever, for whatever reason, you just had to sit on your bunk for the most part, wait till he was done doing whatever he was doing before you could move around freely yourself. And then he would have to climb up on his bunk to get out of your way so you could move around and do whatever you needed to do. Both of y'all was definitely not moving around the cell at the same time. You could forget about it. It was a hassle to say the least, but to avoid bumping into each other or having another man's ass in your face, that's just how you had to move around the joint. Shit was ridiculous. But that's how it was, and it's crazy for real when you think about it, how you could just become used to living in conditions like that after a while. Anyhow, man, a lot of the windows in the cells and the cell blocks, for that matter, was busted out. It was nothing out of the ordinary to see birds flying through the pod or sitting perched up on the pipes overhead. And when it would rain heavy, the water would be coming through the windows, and soak up anything you had laying on the floor, anywhere near or underneath the windows itself. I mean, your cell would look like it was raining on the inside. That's how wet it would get. A lot of dudes, they would try to line the windows up with towels and the plastic garbage bags and shit just to keep away from the elements and to keep out all the bugs and creepy shit that would try to find its way through the cracks and holes in the foundation. It was all kind of bugs and spiders and shit, ants and roaches. We had water bugs, man, the size of little Matchbox Hot Wheels cars running around too. Not to mention mice and rats. The light fixtures, mounted on the walls, they didn't work either. And the sinks and toilets, they was bolted to the floors. But the plumbing and the pipes was so old that, at any given time, especially if your neighbor flushes his toilet, you would have his feces and trash floating around in your toilet. That shit might have came from the cell on top of you or beside you. It was fucking gross, man. It's nothing like I ever experienced.
You said other dudes' feces was coming in your toilet?
Yeah, definitely. If it was like the cell on top of you or the cell beside you, whenever they flushed the shit, their shit would come into your toilet.
That's crazy.
That shit was disgusting. And like I said, the plumbing and all of that was just that old, man. And it seemed like probably it was all the original infrastructure still there from when it started, when it first got built. Nothing had been updated at all. And the prison complex itself was huge. It was old brick buildings with cemented walls on the inside, and them shits was sweat, when it's hot outside. And depending on where your cell was, especially if you're on the top tier, and it'd be like, say, 85, 90 degrees or more outside, it could easily feel as if you were sleeping in a pizza oven with temperatures well over 100 degrees on the inside. We all know heat rises and shit. Keep in mind, this is Virginia, so the heat and the humidity is crazy in the summer. You know what I mean? Those little 8-inch plastic fans, they don't do shit but blow hot air in your face. It was no AC when it was warm, and it's no heat in the winter. You really just had to dress with more clothes on for the most part. And if you ain't had no thermals or long johns or a sweatshirt or nothing, you definitely was gonna freeze, no doubt about it. And then the far corner of the cells, there was these huge steam pipes which ran from the floor all the way through to the ceiling. And in the winter months, they was turned on and left on so that they would generate some type of heat to actually serve as some type of heating element or whatever. I ain't gonna front though, them joints, they would get super hot to the touch. I mean, you couldn't really put your hands on it for real. And I seen plenty of niggas get burned messing around with them pipes, man. A lot of dudes, they used to use them to cook their food on, or boil, water for coffee or for soups or whatever. And what they would do is they would just tie whatever it was they was trying to heat up to the pipe, and they let it sit there till it was hot enough. You could actually boil water on that shit, no bullshit. By the way, I ain't even mentioned that our sinks in the cells, they weren't even equipped with hot water. So all we had was cold water coming from the faucets. So that pipe, that steam pipe, definitely came in handy, man, on many days and nights. I used to tie a plastic rice bag with water in it to the pipe in the mornings just to have some hot water to wash my face and brush my teeth with. Because other than that, making a trip to the washroom or the shower or waiting in a long line at the microwave, that was like the only way you was going to get some hot water. So let me give you a visual idea of how the cell blocks were set up. Because in the different buildings, there was units, but they was all made up of 3 tiers. So you had your first, second, and your third floor. And the first floor obviously being the ground level, and then your second and third being the upper levels. And there was like a small, narrow little catwalk that would wrap around the entire block with an open staircase on both sides, so you could travel up and down the tiers freely. And there's been instances where dudes might get to fighting on those catwalks or whatever and get thrown off the top tier while they was fighting. You know what I mean? I've seen a few dudes jump from the second and third tiers with bed sheets tied around their neck too, trying to make efforts to hang themselves. And just to try to paint the picture accurately, man, I say the ground floor to the top tier was at least, 35, 40 feet high, give or take. So, you could imagine what kind of sound that makes when a body hits the floor from that high in the air, and what kind of mess that's going to make. That shit was crazy, but it definitely happened a few times for that matter. But yeah, man, the cell blocks themselves, they was pretty big. They had about 40 cells on each tier. So that's a total of 120 cells in the block as a whole. And then you figure 2 bodies per cell, that made for 240 men, all in the same space at any given time. There was a small little day room up towards the front of the first floor off to the right side where all the phones were. It was a few tables in there to sit at and play cards and whatnot. They had a pool table in the middle of the floor too, and a little small barber area. And shit most certainly got hectic in there quite a bit. And more often than not, there's always something going on in there. And at any moment, shit could jump off or go left instantly. So, if you know like I know, man, you definitely had to stay on point at all times, no question about it. And the drugs, the place was flooded at times with drugs. I'm talking about like weed, coke, crack, meth, dope, Molly, you name it, it was there. At one point, actually, the place was so flooded with iPhones and iPads and Androids. It's like everybody had one. Even some of the goofy cornball niggas had phones. That shit was crazy to me. And, of course, for the most part, it was all the guards and shit bringing in everything. But there was even guys in there who had, like, real Hennessy and bottles of Grey Goose vodka and shit. Whatever a nigga wanted at the time, you could basically get it if you had the bread for it, obviously. I'm sure it's like that pretty much anywhere you go, though. But I'm going to tell you about something that's not so common. So, the yard was pretty big. It was a large yard. And behind the yard was this little training facility where the rookie guards would train at before they became a CO. And it used to actually be an extension of the prison, for real, and it got turned into this training spot for whatever reason. Well, alongside the yard, on the other side of the fence was like a path, or this little narrow road that came from the visitor and the staff parking lot of the prison to the little training facility. So anyway, cars would drive down this little road a lot of times while dudes is out on the yard. It's supposed to be strictly for the trainees and other prison personnel, but occasionally, there'd be other people coming down the path. They may get to the training part, and then they might turn around and head back out to the prison parking lot. sometimes this would be friends and family of some of the guys that was on the yard. Sometimes, sometimes it might just be whoever else that might have gotten lost or something. It might have been on the premises trying to get around. Anyway, there was times when dudes, they would have their peoples pack up and stuff little tennis balls with drugs and tobacco and shit and toss them over the gates, so they could retrieve them. But, be waiting on the yard or whatever so they could pick the little balls up and whatnot. Well, this one particular time, I think somebody must have had their peoples toss a ball or a few balls over the gate while no one was on the yard. It probably was at nighttime or something, in hopes of, recovering it when they came outside the next morning for wreck. Well, unfortunately, the balls was found and recovered by a guard who happened to be doing a perimeter check around the yard one morning. So next thing that happens, out the blue was we went down on a complete lockdown of the facility. A massive search ensued, and the prison stayed on absolute lockdown for months, until a thorough investigation had totally been exhausted. What had actually happened was it was real bullets found in one of those tennis balls, which obviously led the administration to believe there was a gun of some kind on the compound somewhere in some inmate's possession, which obviously is a huge deal. So we stayed on lockdown for months, man, while they searched every square inch of the prison. The enterprise shops, the yard, the medical unit, the chow hall, the school classrooms, any and everywhere you could think of, man, was searched thoroughly. And at the end of it all, they never really did find a gun of any kind, but the amounts of drugs and tobacco and phones they discovered, along with the knives and all the other shit that a nigga ain't supposed to have, that shit really just changed the whole way things went at the prison after that. Shit got a whole lot tighter and stricter and much harder to get any type of contraband in for a while. A lot of guards got fired. Some of the officers with rank got demoted. A lot of dudes went to the hole and got transferred to, other even higher level securities prisons and shit. And, it's just like they kind of decided to do and did a full sweep and restarted the whole place. And the shit was all over the news too, in the newspapers and all that. It was a pretty big deal. It most certainly wasn't a good look for the DOC at the time, especially for Powhatan and all its residents. We got it bad. But just like everything else, eventually it blew over. And, shit, man, there was a whole lot more wild shit than that I seen taking place. But look, not only the conditions of living in there was ridiculous at the time, but the actual people that lived there could be just as fucked up, if not worse than that. You know what I'm saying? Let me explain what I mean. So, Powhatan was a level 3 security spot. So that meant there was a lot of guys there with life sentences, double life sentences too. Dudes with anywhere from 25 years to 75 years to 150 years is what like the majority of the population was. Now, also amongst these guys was a lot of dudes who've been down for anywhere for like 15 to 30 years or more. And sprinkled in here and there was guys with like 6 or 7 years in, and they may have had less than 10 years to serve on their sentence. Well, just about everybody in that motherfucker moved around with the attitude and the mentality as if they ain't have nothing to lose, you know what I mean? So when it was a problem, even over something that may seem petty to most people, these dudes was ready to take it to the extreme, man, with no conscious thoughts of a happy ending or turning back. I seen guys get their whole head split open like a coconut from some lock in the sock action, man, over a card game or something. I seen dudes get long knives put through them over some phone time. I seen dudes get smashed in the face with dumbbells, man, out on the weight pit from a guy just laying and waiting for the right opportunity to get some get back on a nigga, I even seen a dude's face literally look as if it melted right in his hands after getting a cup of some hot grease and oatmeal mixed with boiling water tossed on him. Now, if you're not familiar with what that is or what it does, man, the hot grease and the oatmeal makes a mixture thick enough to stick to a person's skin when it hits him in the face. This nigga was a dark-skinned dude, too. But when he came back from the infirmary, shit, man, the dude's face was lighter than mine, man, no bullshit. But One of the wildest and craziest things I probably seen though was watching this young boy. He had to be no older than like 19, 20 at the time, man. Dude was in there for an armed robbery, and I think he shot somebody too. So he thought he was real tough, you know, always talking shit about what he'll do to a nigga and all that. You know, a real loudmouth. He was giving bad vibes to everybody, man. Niggas wasn't really feeling him anyway. Well, as it just so happened, you know, one day he got into it with another older dude. Now this dude happened to be probably, had to be like 20, 25 years older than the young boy. And, you know, he wound up calling his bluff. You know what I mean? Cashed in on them wolf tickets young boy was selling. So the older dude, you know, he hadn't really been at Powhatan very long either, but he had been down for a minute somewhere else out of state. And dudes ain't really know what to make of him. You know, he was kind of quiet. He stayed to himself for the most part. Anyway, you know, he wound up beating the young boy up real good, knocking him out cold. You know what I'm saying? But what happened next, though, totally blew my fucking mind, man. So they was up toward the front of the pod, near where the showers was at, right? And the young boy, he laying there on the ground, out cold, damn near snoring. The old head, he picks the young boy up and start dragging him into the shower. So he holding him up like under his arms and pulling him so his feet dragging. Now mind you, it's a long metal picnic table right there, only a few feet from the showers. That's where I'm sitting. I'm watching the whole shit go down. So I ain't realize it at first. You know, I thought the old head was just taking him to the shower to either wake his ass up with some water or, you know, just to get him out of eyesight so no guards would see him laying in the middle of the floor. Boy, was I wrong. Hey, yo, this nigga start pulling the young boy pants down with one hand. And, you know, he kind of prepping himself, you know, to get excited and shit with the other hand. Hey, yo, that's my word, lad. After I caught a glimpse of what was actually about to take place, I got the fuck from around there, man. And after that incident took place, man, the young boy was like a whole new person, you know, and I don't mean for the better, neither. Over the course of the next few months, man, I seen this young boy go from a wannabe tough guy talking big shit to niggas to a measly Minnie Mouse getting taken advantage of by every known booty bandit on the compound. You know, he actually had a few niggas fighting and beefing over him at one point. No bullshit. Shit was crazy as hell, man. Really something I'd like to forget, to be honest. It just goes to show you, though, man, shit really goes down in these hellholes, man. And to be honest, yo, the minute you start feeling like you tough and all that, shit, you bound to bump into somebody tougher with worse intentions for you than you ever planned for. Now, that's not to say a nigga gonna try to rape you and all of that, but ain't no telling what's on another nigga mind, you know? And you see shit like that, that's what caused niggas to run their time up, you know, or they wind up risking being in here for life after you retaliate on some wild shit. Or worse yet, you know, you wind up getting sent home in a box, though, you know, and never getting the chance to walk out the front gates. It's sad, but it's true. You know, I've seen it happen on several occasions, man, too many times. So, yo, my advice, man, for all you young niggas drilling shit out there left and right, you ain't gonna find no guns in prison, bro. You know, if you out there in them streets, man, you should be getting to the money. Focus on getting some paper, man, and stay the fuck out of here. Trust and believe, this shit ain't what you want. That's a fact. Hey, yo, lad, you know you my nigga, fam. You know I appreciate you giving a voice to the voiceless niggas behind these bars with your platform. You know, keep doing what you're doing and keep rising, man. Niggas is definitely watching and listening with both eyes and ears open wide. Believe that. Shout out to all my niggas everywhere still behind these walls. All my niggas and fam that still hold me down after all these years. Big Marv, what up? Orange Ave, what up? Wayne Flame, Chain Bang, y'all know what it is. Sonny, what's good? This your man Truth, aka DJ for show. NJ to VA, man, both ways. Don't forget to tune in and subscribe to my podcast at Truth Beyond These Walls. You can find it on just about every platform that got podcasts available. I'm out of here for now, though. Holla at me. One.
Hey, yo, follow Wayne Flame on Instagram if you need a hat this drippy, you heard? Hey, yo, and make sure you search for and listen to that Truth Behind These Walls podcast by my bro Truth, aka DJ for show. You heard he on there dropping them jewels. Check him out.